The Atlantic never slept. Its waves rolled in endless black swells, hiding threats beneath the surface. By 1942, the Germans believed they were untouchable, prowling in wolf packs that could devastate convoys before disappearing into the night. But in a small radar lab on the edge of Newfoundland, Eleanor Graves and her team were rewriting the rules of the game. The first blip appeared just as dawn broke over the foggy coastline. Eleanor's eyes snapped to the screen, heart leaping. "There," she whispered, tracing the signal with a fingertip. "Another U-boat." Captain Simmons leaned in, shoulder brushing hers again, a familiar thrill racing through her. "They're bold tonight," he murmured, tone low, intimate. Eleanor felt the heat rise to her cheeks, but she refused to acknowledge it. Not yet. There was work to be done. The blip moved toward the convoy, and Eleanor's fingers flew across the console. "Plot the intercept course. Alert the destroyers. Depth charges ready." "Right," Simmons said, though his gaze lingered longer than necessary. His hand nearly brushed hers as he reached to adjust a dial, and Eleanor's breath caught. The tension between them was a steady undercurrent, weaving through the hum of machines, the flicker of radar screens, and the roar of the Atlantic beyond. Hours passed, the lab alive with activity. Technicians murmured to each other in shorthand, noting pulses, adjusting frequencies, tracking movement. Every blip was a heartbeat, every movement a potential kill or disaster. Eleanor's mind raced, balancing calculations with instinct, intuition, and the faint pull of the captain beside her. Then came the first major anomaly. A blip appeared where none should have been, a ghost on the radar, moving erratically, dancing between signals. "What the hell?" Simmons muttered. "Is it a false echo?" Eleanor leaned in, eyes narrowing. "No, it's real. But it's not behaving like a normal U-boat." Her fingers flew across the console, adjusting frequencies, scanning, tracking. The green pulse flickered, then steadied. There it was, a submarine that didn't follow patterns, a ghost in the waves. Could it be a new German tactic? Simmons asked, voice tight with concern. His closeness was a constant reminder of danger, the enemy outside, the tension inside the room. Eleanor's hand brushed his briefly as she leaned forward. Sparks of electricity seemed to pass through them both. "Possibly," she said, her voice calm despite the rapid beat of her heart. "But we'll find out before it's too late." Across the Atlantic, Brandt's U-boat prowled silently. He had begun to sense the danger, the inexplicable failures, the sudden losses of comrades, the uncanny precision of Allied destroyers. Yet he could not understand the new weapon tracking him, pulses of light invisible to the eye, mapping his every movement with terrifying accuracy. Back in the lab, Eleanor adjusted the radar, watching the ghostly blip dance across the scope. "We've never seen anything like this," she said, tension lacing her tone. Simmons leaned over her shoulder again, their closeness unavoidable. "Maybe we should test it," he suggested, lips brushing near her ear as he whispered. The warmth of his breath made her shiver, and she almost laughed, but then the blip shifted again, demanding her full attention. "Not now, Captain," she said, though the soft flush of her cheeks betrayed her. He smirked, retreating slightly but never leaving her side. The flirtation remained, suspended in the charged silence between them, while the radar hummed and blinked, tracking an enemy they could now predict. The ghost blip moved again, this time directly toward a convoy of merchant ships. Eleanor barked orders, Simmons relayed them, and the destroyers maneuvered, dropping depth charges with deadly precision. Explosions rocked the Atlantic, sending plumes of spray into the night. The echo returned on radar, confirmation of a kill. For a fleeting moment, Eleanor allowed herself a small, private smile. She glanced at Simmons. "We did it," she said softly. He stepped closer, almost brushing her arm, and said with a low chuckle, "We make a pretty good team, don't we?" "Focus," she replied, tone teasing, though her eyes betrayed the pull she felt. He grinned knowingly, leaning back just enough to let her regain composure. The tension between them remained, a subtle undercurrent beneath the life-and-death drama of the Atlantic War. Hours turned into night. More blips appeared, more ghosts surfaced, and more U-boats were intercepted. Eleanor and her team tracked every movement, refining the pulse, predicting every maneuver, gaining confidence that this invisible weapon could change the course of the war. But there was no rest. The Germans began experimenting with signals, attempting to jam the radar, to hide their presence. Eleanor's fingers flew over the controls, intercepting, adjusting, countering. Simmons stayed close, whispering suggestions, teasing her with fleeting touches as he passed behind her. Each touch was electric, fleeting, dangerous, but impossible to ignore. The tension came to a head when a blip split into two. One was real, the other a decoy. "They're trying to trick us," Eleanor said sharply. Her eyes met Simmons. "We need to split attention. I'll take the main pulse, you track the decoy." His grin was infuriatingly confident. "Yes, ma'am." And yet, as they leaned over their respective consoles, fingers brushing over keys and dials, the intimacy between them grew, subtle but undeniable. Minutes stretched into hours. The Atlantic storm outside intensified, waves crashing against the unseen U-boats, tossing the convoys like toys. But the radar lab remained a haven of tension, intimacy, and strategy. Eleanor's pulse raced, from adrenaline, from responsibility, from the touch of a hand lingering near hers. By dawn, the first ghost blip had been neutralized, sunk beneath a barrage of depth charges. More U-boats had been intercepted than ever before, the invisible war tipping in favor of the Allies. Eleanor exhaled, hands trembling slightly as she leaned back. Simmons leaned closer, whispering, "We survived the ghosts." She smiled, feeling both exhaustion and something warmer, deeper, connecting them in the quiet hum of machines and the roar of the Atlantic beyond. "This, for now," she replied, letting her gaze linger on him a fraction longer than necessary. And somewhere beneath the waves, the Germans began to understand something terrifying. The Allies could see them. Every move, every shadow, every heartbeat. The Atlantic was no longer their domain. And in the small radar lab, two hearts beat faster than any blip on the scope, caught between war, duty, and desire. The invisible war had intensified. And for Eleanor and Simmons, the stakes had never been higher, not just for the ocean, but for the fragile tension simmering between them.